Europe in decline. Is a testosterone deficit to blame? And Canada's Liberals shift tone supporting a Palestinian state. I'm Faith Goldie, and you're watching On the Hunt.
Do you not have an answer for them, Justin? There is no left and right on this one. There is, however, right and wrong.
Hi, Europe? Yeah, just one question for you. Where are all your dudes? I'm just wondering, because it would seem like there are no men left over there. Like, where were all the guys on New Year's Eve in Cologne or Berlin or Hamburg? And where are all the men in Sweden, like every day while chicks are getting raped? I looked in Amsterdam, but all I could find there were these sissies in skirts pretending violent sex attackers actually give a damn about their protest. Oh, and I checked in with Sweden. All I found there was this police chief who sympathizes with a migrant murderer. Then I looked in Norway, and they're pretty sure that their anti-rape courses for migrants will be enough to keep the whole need for men thing at bay. And I checked in with Denmark, but they're a little busy prosecuting a woman who pepper sprayed a rapist, yet to return my calls. Wait, what's that? Men are afraid to be men because feminism? I guess you're right. I mean, when even the NATO Secretary General is tweeting about his meeting with Prime Minister Trudeau and their discussion of the role of men as feminists, it does seem like we're in a testosterone recession. See, in the wake of women's lib, feminism has been totally hijacked, and in their tyranny of the classroom and pop culture has created a male population in both private society and the political class alike to be totally girly. Danish journalist Iben Thranholm, well, she put it perfectly.
I think if you look at our politicians, they're very soft. They're like mothers. I mean, they are embracing, they're inclusive, and they talk about how we should embrace refugees. Of course, we should help people that are in need. But, I mean, they can't deal with the rapings, they can't deal with terrorism. So, I mean, European politicians look very weak, and that's because our culture has become feminized.
In destroying male hero virtues, we have lost our balance in societies. This isn't to say that women are incapable of governing or that we shouldn't extol traditionally female qualities like nurturing and motherhood, but banning masculinity has been a failed experiment. By shunning that instinct to protect women and children for the sake of women's equality, we've actually left women worse off. And so, abandoned by girly men in government, police, and civil society, European women must now fend for themselves. And it's weird, right? Because history has delivered so many great male heroes from European governments and battlefields. Where are our heroes today? Now, I'm not arguing for aggressive, preemptive strikes or an invasion of territory, but there are over 1 million people who have come to feminine Europe as a result of your invitation and bringing them with them murderous violence and sexual attacks. And this isn't hyperbole, people. These are the facts. And your response is to leave your doors open and put on a miniskirt? I mean, what message are you hoping to send? At newsflash, thanks to several sections of the Quran and a hyper-patriarchal societal structure, a lot of these guys don't actually respect women. And they'll respect dudes dressed as women even less. But thanks to feminism's buddy evil multiculturalism, we're too afraid to say that either. I mean, it's no wonder that women took to the streets after the sex attacks in Germany with flowers for migrants. I mean, today's feminists are more concerned with appearing xenophobic than actually protecting women. Hey men, here's a tip. Remove your pair from the feminist hands in which they are now held, reattach, and revolt. Your culture is better, and your women are worth defending. Stay with us. Andrew Lawton brings us the latest in the Liberal shift in tone towards Israel.
I love Alberta. I've lived here my whole life, and I'm proud of it. I'm proud of our free market, pro-business, low-tax, do-it-yourself attitude. And now, I'm watching my province get destroyed. We've all had hints of the NDP's radical views in the past, but no one actually thought they'd ever run this province. Not even them. And now they are. And the worst is yet to come. I give my sad forecast for Alberta in my new ebook, The Destroyers, Rachel Notley and the NDP's War on Alberta. Go to TheDestroyers.ca to sign up for your free copy today.
Welcome back. Time now for your week's top headlines. In international news, police in riot gear were called to a German migrant camp after hundreds of men brawled violently over, wait for it, different interpretations of the Quran. Pakistani Muslims discovered that a group from Afghanistan had been drinking alcohol, oh no, and accused them of being, quote, bad Muslims. The situation quickly escalated into a violent riot with a total of 32 police vehicles on the scene, resulting in 5 hospitalizations. Meantime, in Sweden, police have resorted to sending undercover officers to Stockholm's swimming pools amid a rising number of sex assaults on girls by migrants over there. This as British intelligence officials warn ISIS jihadists are exploiting the migrant crisis to smuggle terrorists into Europe with fake passports. Who would have figured that would have happened? And in the U.S., a Texas grand jury has cleared Planned Parenthood's a la carte fetal harvesting as free from any wrongdoing, instead indicting the 2 pro-life filmmakers who published the videos of the organization's top brass bartering for baby parts. And in Oregon, one of the militiamen involved in the weeks-long occupation of a federal wildlife refuge has been shot dead. Lavoy Finicum was apprehended by police during a traffic stop on Highway 395, while several eyewitnesses allege that his hands were in the air when he was shot by authorities. There is, however, little expectation of a Ranchers' Lives Matter riot. Frankly, that's a good thing. And it'll be a battle of the ages in this year's Super Bowl as the Carolina Panthers face off with the Denver Broncos. And I, for one, hope Peyton Manning wipes that arrogant smirk off Cam Newton's face by the 4th quarter. And closer to home, Foreign Affairs Minister Stéphane Dion says he's keen on restoring relations with Russia. Yeah, that's the nation which still illegally occupies Ukrainian territory in a war that has claimed over 6,000 lives. I just hope that the 1.2 million Ukrainian Canadians are paying attention. And in Toronto, a hotel has become home to more than 600 government-sponsored Syrian refugees, while the Canadians living in the hotel say that they're being pushed out to make room for more. Isn't that lovely? All right, stay with us. More of On the Hunt on the other side of this break.
Looking for the perfect gift? Did you know TheRebel.media has a store? Make a statement with a t-shirt. Have your morning coffee in a Fearless Travel coffee mug. There's even an Ezra Levant bobblehead. It's a one-stop shop for the perfect gift. And don't forget to pick up something for yourself. Go to TheRebel.media/store to find out more.
Ontario residents are being hosed on electricity prices. The latest Auditor General's report says we've been overcharged by $37 billion over the last several years. That works out to nearly $2,800 for every man, woman, and child. Why? Mismanagement and bad policy choices from the Ontario Liberals. It's going to cost us billions more in coming years. Energy Minister Bob Chiarelli won't take responsibility. He's lashing out. It's time for Bob to go. If you agree, go to firebob.ca. That's firebob.ca and make your voice heard.
President Abbas and Hamas leader Haniyeh have spoken openly over the past few months about a third intifada, which is essentially an uprising against Israel. And I think it is incumbent on Minister Dion, Prime Minister Trudeau, and the Liberal government to stand up and to condemn this incitement by both the Palestinian Authority and by Hamas in Gaza, let alone Hezbollah and the regime in Tehran.
That was Deputy Foreign Affairs critic Peter Kent earlier this week saying that Israel should brace for a third intifada. So the question becomes, is Justin Trudeau's Canada more friend or foe when it comes to our ally Israel? This week, the Liberal government put out its first statement on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, which included calling Israel a steadfast friend, an ally. But then it also warned against building more settlements on disputed land. Let's take a look at the bullet points. Foreign Affairs Minister Stéphane Dion said Canada was concerned about the violence in the region and said that the creation of an independent Palestinian state beside Israel was the, quote, most viable path to peace. Meantime, more than 20 Israelis have died since October 1, most in random attacks by Palestinians, while roughly 150 Palestinians have also died, many while attacking Jews or in protests and clashes with Israeli security forces. Now, Conservative Foreign Affairs critic Tony Clement is criticizing the Liberals' message for not mentioning, well, I don't know, say the terrorist group Hamas, which has launched numerous rocket attacks against Israel and encouraged Palestinians to attack Israelis at random. Imagine not being able to go to the bus stop, folks. Here to break down the latest and what this means for Canada is the host of the Andrew Lawton Show on AM 980. Also, he's a contributor here at TheRebel.media, a man who recently returned from Israel, my good friend Andrew Lawton. Thanks so much for being here, Andrew.
Great to have the opportunity, Faith. Thank you.
All right, so Andrew, you've just returned. Tell us a little bit about what things are like on the ground and your initial reaction to this very first statement on the conflict from our new Liberal government.
Well, when you mentioned the question earlier on in your intro about friend or foe, the problem is foes are at least honest about the fact that they're enemies here, whereas a friend in disguise, a friend in quotation marks, I think is what we're dealing with here in this new government. It's incredibly concerning because Israel needs support. Israel needs support from the global community. Israel needs support from its allies. So support that comes with conditions, support that comes with this kind of rhetoric that we heard about back in November from Minister Dion being an honest broker, that is not what Israel needs. And it also shows a blatant ignorance as to what the actual realities of life in Israel for Israelis and for Israel's sovereignty really are.
You were just there. What are those realities from your vantage point?
Well, for starters, we were in a delegation of Canadian media members, and there was one day we were walking through the Mehen Yehuda market, which is a really popular open-air market. It's where a lot of the locals go. And someone had been stabbed there about 2 days prior in a terrorist attack. It was an older woman. And you wouldn't know it. People were going about their day. People were doing their shopping. People were picking up fruit and teas and all of these wonderful things. And I had talked to our guide about it. And I'm paraphrasing here, but she said, you know, in the world, if a radical Muslim terrorist kills someone in the streets, they don't forget it for years. In Israel, that's just Tuesday. It's just a part of everyday life there. And that does not seem to be realized by all of the anti-Zionists that we have here in Canada, which seem to be certainly influencing or be represented by the Liberal government.
Now, it's interesting that you bring up the anti-Zionists because just recently, the leader of Iran basically blamed any hostilities that he had in his U.S. relations on the Zionist lobby. So meantime, Canada right now, we're warming to Iran. We're talking about bringing back an embassy in Tehran, something that the Conservatives did away with in 2012. So as we remove sanctions and cuddle up with Iran, we're also kind of giving Israel the finger in a sense. How do you square that circle, Andrew?
Well, I think what we have here is a prime minister that wants to make friends with outgoing President Barack Obama. He's really following the American leadership on Iran, which has been the height of Western weakness on what is easily one of the world's biggest enemies right now. And I wanted to, just to put that into context here, go back to the comments made this week by Minister Dion, this moral equivalence between Israel and the Palestinians, this sense that, you know what, Palestinian terror attacks are the same as Israeli settlements. That was basically the comment that he made. And I think it's the same when we look at Iran. There seems to be this predisposition towards moral relativism, which is highly concerning.
Now, this clearly is a shift from where Harper's Conservatives stood, especially when you look at the fact that, Dion here is calling for an independent Palestinian state right beside Israel versus, say,
and he also, by the way, forgets that it's Israelis that have pushed for a two-state solution, not the Palestinians who want one Palestinian state. So I think his comments are completely aligned with what Israel wants. He just doesn't realize it because, again, this government seems to be moving towards a worldview that says Israel is the aggressor here, which is so not the case.
So what does that do for the Jewish voting bloc and diaspora here in Canada? I will point out to folks that we have among the very largest diaspora Jewish population outside of Israel here in Canada. Where are those people right now under this Liberal government?
It's tough to say because even under Stephen Harper, there were a lot of Jews, especially in Toronto. Those were the ones that I was able to encounter at rallies and whatnot, who were not at all conservative ideologically. They weren't conservative economically. They weren't conservative on any of these fronts, but they were voting for Stephen Harper because he was Israel's support system here in Canada. And even in Israel, that was known. There was a time when one journalist in Israel told me about 5 years ago that Stephen Harper was Israel's only friend in the world. But he didn't say Stephen Harper. He said Canada was Israel's only friend in the world because of Stephen Harper. So what will happen to the Jewish vote? I don't know. But I think that's also secondary to the Jewish quality of life in Israel. I have to share something with you very briefly here. When I was there, I had the opportunity to meet with a Palestinian journalist. He hosts, similar to me, a talk show that takes callers in Ramallah, which is the capital of the Palestinian Authority. And he was telling me that he did a segment on his show, and he asked, is it okay to stab Jews in the street? This is the kind of topic that you wouldn't think would fly. He assured me that most said no, but seemed to be unnerved by the fact that still there were people that were going to call into a radio show and say, you know what? Yeah, stabbing Jews in the streets of Israel, that's acceptable. And this is coming from a man that says he wants peace. The problem is that peace for Palestinians looks very different than peace for Israelis does.
The attacks in Israel and the surrounding areas by the Palestinian people, Hamas-inspired attacks are one thing, but we're also seeing anti-Semitism wipe across Europe right now, especially with ISIS on the move. I want to quickly, before I let you go, share with our viewers today the statement by Prime Minister Trudeau just this week. It was Holocaust Remembrance Day, an important day to not only the Jewish population, but anyone who gives a damn about world history. On this day, we pay tribute to the memory of the millions of victims murdered during the Holocaust. We honor those who survived atrocities at the hand of the Nazi regime, and we welcome their courageous stories and hope and perseverance. The Holocaust is a stark reminder of the dangers and the risks of allowing hate, prejudice, and discrimination to spread unchallenged. It also reminds us that silence must never be an option when humanity is threatened. As we pause to educate ourselves and our families of the bitter lessons of the Holocaust, we also strengthen our resolve to work with domestic and international partners to continue defending human rights and condemning intolerance. You notice anything absent from there, Andrew?
Yeah, I think that's what they call foreign policy from the heart outward. Not only does he not mention Jews or Judaism or anti-Semitism, but also doesn't even mention Auschwitz, which was what that yesterday was a commemoration of the liberation of. And especially if you contrast it with the Honorable Rona Ambrose's statement, where she talks about modern day and historic anti-Semitism. She talks about the plight of the Jewish people. She talks about the human rights violations at the hands of the Nazis. She doesn't try to make a contemporary political point, which if you read between the lines is exactly what the Prime Minister was trying to do.
As we cuddle up to a theocracy and a dictatorship and flip the bird to the one democracy in the Middle East, I worry not only for Israel as a state, their diaspora, and frankly, Canada's place on the world stage. Andrew, you've been great. Quickly tell folks where they can find you before we let you go.
Best way to get a hold of me is on Twitter at Andrew Lawton, and you can also listen to my Rebel podcast, Lawton Online, every Thursday.
All right, you're a gem. We're lucky to have you, Andrew. All right, folks, don't go anywhere. When we come back, I tell you which movie you have got to see this weekend. And hey, bring your pinko friends too. Stay with us.
So open-minded that the brains have fallen out.
What's the point that you're making?
The point that I'm making is that if you're going to propose a massive overhaul to the way the economy is developed in terms of carbon tax, cap and trade, other forms like that, it helps to have some science that is in fact settled.
We've heard you loud and clear. You can't get enough Canadian conservative news and opinion. Why not check out our blog? It's all your favorite conservative bloggers together on a page called The Megaphone. Go to TheRebel.media/TheMegaphone or click on the Megaphone menu from our main page to check it out.
Welcome back. In lieu of your quote of honor this week, thought we could shake things up a bit with a short movie review. Michael Bay's 13 Hours, The Secret Soldiers of Benghazi is a must-see for anyone who gives a damn about the upcoming U.S. election, the allotment of military resources, or the truth about the events that actually took place on September 11th in 2012. 13 Hours is an account of the attacks by jihadists on the U.S. diplomatic facility in Libya, which claimed the lives of 4 Americans, including Ambassador Christopher Stevens. Now, while the film was branded as right-wing even before its release, after having seen the movie, that is utter hogwash. The movie makes mention, only one mention, of the BS storyline pushed by Obama's administration that the attacks were a result of a YouTube video. Remember that? Meanwhile, Hillary Clinton's name is never heard, and Obama only gets one mention as POTUS. I won't spoil much more of the flick, but I would encourage you to head to the theaters this weekend and support Michael Bay's worthwhile project about one of the most important international events of this decade. That's it for this week, folks. Until next week, God bless, and remember, we've got your 6.